I had created the story, The Corn Chief, as an oral story. When I originally created it, it was to talk about leadership and humility. When we're stepping into leadership, is that, power over everybody or a responsibility to everybody? And so playing with that idea is how The Corn Chief came as a story to me. And it was an oral story. And as I was looking towards publishing, I was in school for writing and it was real how to tackle taking an oral story and putting it into print. And when I thought about those elements of oral storytelling, it was really about, for me, that world of belonging. So I knew I wanted to do dioramas. I knew diorama was there. And maybe a year or so before I had moved to that point, I had met Lindsay Delarond, and she had made corn husk dolls in the school districts. And so when I was putting this together, I had asked her, as it has to do with corn, as she's Mohawk and I'm Anishinaabe, so we're very close actually geographically, even though we're both in Victoria. And so really talking about the places that we both feel connected within the story and within the dolls. And so we had decided to make these corn husk dolls. And part of it was to kind of play with this idea of belonging. How will a child recognize themselves, know that they're invited into the story? And so part of that was really having them faceless and having them be different, this world that they could maybe relate to, they could see themselves. And for that book specifically, we took those characters and that story into Hans Helgeson and South Park schools, their elementary schools. We told the kids about this and we asked them if they wanted to donate items, that parent-approved items, that we would use then in the story. We would use in our dioramas. If they donated it, we would find a way to put it in there. And it was part of seeking help from children and opinions from children of how to include other children. And so I was really grateful to have that support, because it was really, again, as I had told you, a lot of what I do comes from really not knowing an answer and trying to explore that space. I think the magic of story is when somebody takes you into their world and it ultimately takes you closer to yourself. And that's like a very magical thing. And so to hope to be part of that. I really like the idea of the story, the book being useful for people to feel like it's theirs now, right? It's a gift beyond. It's not mine anymore, it's theirs. And that they feel that and participate in those ways. They're invited in. This is where I met Teddy for the first time from Medicine Wheel, and it was a funny story in which we came to know each other. But when I had already done the book as a self-publish, and so this was about shopping the book to maybe another publisher, or I don't know the next step, but I had I think 2 copies left or something, so I should probably do something. And when we met, he wanted to read The Corn Chief, and we were going to republish and do that work with The Corn Chief. And he said, "Well, do you have any other stories?" And I said, "Well, I have this story, which is The 4 Fallen Eagles." I said, "But it isn't written. I made it up." Well, now it's almost 15 years ago, when I was working in alternative education in a First Nations grad program. And at that time, I was leaving the program as an Indigenous education assistant and moving into doing some family support and story work in community. As a big step for me. And I had been on this journey with people in alternative ed, so with complex lives, multi-age grouping. And as you may know, when we're in those kinds of spaces, those bonds, those relationships, they're meaningful, and those transitions are hard. And we were going to have a going away, like my final party. And I wanted to give the students something, and I didn't know what to give them. And when you're shopping, you're like, that's not right. I'll know the right thing. I'll figure it out. And it was a rainy day, awesome, like this. And I was thinking about this gift, what can I give them? And this story started to come to me, these 4 eaglets, these 4 fallen eagles. And they're, knocked out of their nest to the forest floor, and their journey through this world. This had come to me, and it was like, this is our story, their story. You know, can I give someone a story? Is that a gift like cookies? You know, is that your homemade, does this count? You know, and really thinking about myself as an Indigenous person, like the practice, I don't know the protocols around, you know, like that kind of world, I don't really know. And so when I came to this party, I told them just that. I offered them this story. I said, you know, this is what I have. And I told them the story. And I asked for permission to retell it, which they did give me permission to retell, luckily, or we would have a book today. And it was that real moment. And I think what I had told them at that time when I created the story, it was really, if you've read the book, it's sort of, no matter where you land, you're always going to be an eagle. And I think a lot of us, when we're in alternative education or upgrading, or we don't know all of these places we're from, we don't have all of this control, but we go looking for something we don't think we have. And it was really this reminder that, like, wherever you land, this is always going to be true about you, you know. And when I wrote the book, I've had many people ask, well, what about this eagle who stayed here, or the eagle that stayed there, or, you know, like, where's this? It's the four, you know. And like I was saying about leaving plot holes, it's not really a plot hole as it is another story. And when I ask children, when I talk about this story, when that question comes up, it really is an invitation, like oral storytelling, to then, instead of giving them the answer of what happened, to ask them what they think would happen, to ask them to imagine, to say, why would you stay? What would, you know, because people do, and they're allowed that choice. And I think, like I said, we can sometimes be really afraid of what we don't know. Because it didn't go as planned doesn't mean it's not going to end up just as it's supposed to be for you. You know, and you have the right to determine that. And I think for me, I wouldn't even say like, oh, I'm empowering you, or oh, I see this resilience. It just is actually there. And luckily I've been humanized and loved and supported and educated, and that when I look at these spaces where we can see a lot of hard things in a story, a lot of hard truths, but that doesn't stop it from being a really beautiful engagement, a really phenomenal, you know, choice or plot twist. And I think that piece, like my dad would say as I was growing up, a lot of quotes from my dad, but one of them is that we're all heroes of our own stories, and we're also supporting characters in everyone else's, and we have to find our time to play. And I think I even ride that between like what is mine to say, what isn't, and the courage it takes to kind of step in and to find out, I guess, you know, whether it's an excitement or an anxiety. Like I was telling you before, someone's going to tell me at some point whether they like it or not. But I really think in reaching out with the Four Fallen Eagles, like that started as a story for these students. And it became, for me, as it became a written story, that realization is, this is a very, very common Indigenous story of survivance and of what our history is, and how do we tell some of these harsh stories in a way that doesn't harm the reader or the viewer. And I think that's this beautiful thing about children. They're a willing audience, but also kids really feel. They feel alongside that, and I don't need them to know all these facts. That's not my job to teach them to memorize these dates or these occurrences or these things, but to really just talk to the heart, and so that we're open to all those different stories and all those different tellers. And I think that's part of being part of invited, belonging to that narrative that we are all in, you know.